Well, another week has come and gone. I'll tell you what. We've been asking for rain now for, how long? 2 months. We haven't seen much rain at all in the Twin Cities, let alone much of Minnesota has been in a drought. Well, you always hear that term, be careful what you wish for. We got it. We got tons of rain this week. I was at the Minnesota State Fair setting up Tuesday, Wednesday, worked it on Thursday, and oh boy, did we get rain. It poured. The skies opened up. It rained a ton. Yesterday on Saturday, in fact, Jack's football games, half of them got canceled because they got rained out. We got a little bit of rain, I believe, on Friday. I can't remember. I feel like we got rain every single day this week, which was great. We needed it. Our water levels were super low. We needed to bring some of that water back up because some of these accesses and these lakeshore owners, I'm telling you, in dire straits. It was pretty tough going, and even this rain didn't make a big enough impact to fix any of this. It did help for sure. Brought water levels up a little bit, but we still need a lot more rain, a strong winter of ice and snow so that we can get spring back to normal, which I still think is going to be a tough accomplishment, but hey, we'll take what we can. So we saw some change in patterns this week. We didn't have scorching hot temperatures. We never, I don't think, even hit the 90s. We had a lot of mornings in the 50s and 60s and highs in the 70s, and a few days that creeped into the 80s. Humidity was gross. I mean, you could feel it out there. You're just sweat some of these days. I almost felt like you were in Florida with some of these dew points teetering at 70, which is tropical. So we saw some really humid days, which brought some of that atmosphere, that change in conditions to what brought some of this rain onto us. I caught fish a variety of ways. I did not fish a ton this week, just a couple days. Usually I'm out a lot more than that. However, we had State Fair kicked off as we speak. We have a giant booth for Clam Outdoors down in Minnesota State Fair in the corner of Cooper and Lee. Phenomenal crew down there showing off all of our new ice fishing stuff. You can check out the screen tents. You can check out Blackfish gear. So if you're at the Minnesota State Fair, please stop by the corner of Cooper and Lee and talk to our team members that are there today, and we'll be there through Labor Day. I'll be back there on Thursday, so if you're going to be at the State Fair this coming Thursday, September 2nd, come by, say hi. We'll talk fishing together, share some tips, look at some lake maps, and hopefully get you on your way to catching a few late summer fish. So how have we been catching them this week? Pretty similar. We've been catching them, of course, in the jig worm, weed line stuff. The pattern has been pretty consistent. This rain did show some fish move a little shallower and make some movements here the last couple days. We caught some fish on swim jigs and chatterbaits again, which is always fun. Felt like fall during certain moments where it felt cooler than normal. However, don't kid yourself, we're still in summer patterns. I did just go fishing though. I did just go chasing fish. Didn't really target anything specific, and again, brought back out that sassy swimmer. We talked about this earlier in the year, back in May, and this was kind of an all-purpose presentation for catching walleyes, bass, pike, whatever. And I brought this back out of my bag of tricks and caught a bunch of fish. You can see that right there, that sassy swimmer. That's just a drop TG, a Clam tungsten jig head. This is an 1/8 ounce, and that's that sassy swimmer from Mr. Twister. It's just a small, about a 4-inch bait with the paddle tail on the back end, and that works exceptionally well just to cover water. I can pitch this on a weed line and fish it just like I would a jig worm, or I can swim it through the weeds. I can cast it along shallower cover in 4 to 8 feet, and that's pretty much what I did. I just covered water. I'm using a 7'3" medium action spinning rod, and I got a 2500 series Shimano on there, and I'm actually using really thin braided line, like a micro braid, like a Berkeley Nanofill line on here, 15-pound test, and I got like an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader on this, and that gives me a little more versatility to target just about anything that swims. We caught bass, walleye, and pike on this setup this week. Super easy way to fish. I've talked about it before. It's a pretty dulled down approach. It's not too fancy. It's a jig head and a plastic paddle tail, and you're covering water, and you can rip jig it, you can slowly swim back to the boat, and it catches a variety of fish. That's that sassy swimmer from Mr. Twister. A lot of cool colors and I'm fishing that with a tungsten drop TG from Clam Jig Head. And away we go. Custom built rod from Thorne Brothers there. Been fishing that rod for many, many years. Love it to death. Can't beat it. Another situation, another presentation that we've been fishing, other than the jig worm and some of the stuff we've been beating up like a dead horse, is the drop shot. A lot of anglers turn to a drop shot this time of year, and I will use it fairly often. However, as a fishing guide, I find that a jig worm is just a little more effective and probably easier and more conducive to use. Not that a drop shot doesn't catch you a pile of fish. I just prefer the jig worm because I can get my clients on an easier approach. They can rip through the weeds better. I'm not getting they're not getting follow hooked. I'm not retangling lines. I'm not cutting. I just think as an application, that jig worm helps me be a better guide. It also catches a pile of fish, because when I go out fishing with a buddy where I can use whatever I want, I still pick up the jig worm and catch them. However, the drop shot can get some fish to go. If you want to give them a few different options, I may have 2 anglers fish a jig worm and the 3rd angler fish a drop shot. If I have a guy or gal that is a little more apt to fishing, more understands it a little better, I might deploy a jig or a drop shot. And I fish a drop shot pretty simple. I got a cylinder weight. Again, the size of the weight depends on the depth and cover and the presentation, but this is about an 1/8 ounce cylinder weight right here, crimped down. I got about a 1 foot lead, 10 inches to 12 inch lead, and I'm fishing that spin shot hook from VMC. I don't know if you can see that tied to the line. It's got a swivel. It can spin 360 degrees around that line. And then I'm actually wacky rigging a pocket fry from Mr. Twister. A lot of anglers will fish a minnow bait, which you can certainly do, a flick bait, a small worm, but I'm just wacky rigging. You can see that, just a little pocket fry there, and I'm pitching that out. So my main line is going to be a 20-pound braid all the way up to my main line, because I'm fishing mostly weed line stuff. I'm not fishing open water, clear presentations where I might need to use a fluorocarbon. I'm using a braided line, and then I got that small lead. This can sometimes entice those fish to bite. It can give them a different look, a different approach. If you want to not always fish the jig worm, we did catch some fish on this drop shot presentation. And for a rod, I'm just using a 7 to 7.6 medium action rod, similar to the rod I just showed you for that Sassy Swimmer. 2500 series Shimano, 20-pound braided line. Same setup I would use for jig worm fishing. I just cut off the jig worm, tie on the drop shot situation, the drop shot application, and cover water. It's pretty effective for catching bass this time of year when they're schooled up, or you're trying to maybe give them something that they haven't seen before, or slow down, and I can just shake that rod tip. Where the jig worm, I'm fishing slow, working the bottom, subtoe hops, working it back down so it jumps. That drop shot, the weight's on the bottom, the lure's up here, and I want that lure just to dance in their face. So I'll be working that rod kind of like this to get those fish to bite. So those are 2 simple approaches you can throw into your arsenal. And the beauty of both these approaches is, even though I am usually targeting bass, I can use these to target anything. And on that drop shot setup I showed you, you could easily take a 3 or 4 inch minnow bait and put it on there and target walleyes. Maybe change the type of hook you're using, but the situation still calls for walleyes. You can use that drop shot presentation to catch walleyes. Same thing with that drop TG and Sassy Swimmer. You can use both of those presentations to not just bass fish, but to walleye fish, or just go fishing. A lot of times if I'm targeting a variety of species and I'm not sure what I'm going to catch, I'll have no problem fishing a drop shot. I just might change the hook I'm using, and of course the presentation. I might go to a minnow bait, or even that Sassy Swimmer put on there on the drop shot presentation will catch you plenty of walleyes too. So it's a pretty versatile approach. So as we get into this late summer pattern, where the fish start to move a little more, sometimes the species collide and you get a lot of bass mixing with the walleyes and pike and whatever else. I find it oftentimes fun just to go fishing for whatever bites. So these are 2 presentations you can use just to fish and have a good time and enjoy your time on the water. And we're going to see soon these water temps start to drop. We've seen it a little bit already. We're in the low 70s for water temps. We're not probably going to see much 80-degree water temp now the rest of the year. We are looking at September this coming week. The next report I come at you with will be Labor Day weekend in September. So we are now going to see that downward slide with water temps and conditions, which is fine with me because I think the best is yet to come. I love September and October fishing. I think it's your best opportunity to catch big fish. So good time to get out there and chase down some fish. and have some fun doing it. So I anticipate this next week, very similar. If you're gonna get out this week, I would anticipate you're gonna see similar patterns. You can use the jig worm, the drop shot, the jig head presentation. I would encourage you to start breaking out the chatterbait again, maybe even a spinnerbait, and start covering some of the mid shallow range, like that 4 to 8 foot range. I've seen some fish start to move up there as we've seen cool rain and cooling morning temperatures. So you're gonna see a little bit of a transition start to develop. We're not quite there yet. Don't jump off your summer pattern, because that's gonna be your big bite and your majority of your fish still. So we are still in summer pattern. Don't get that one mistaken. But go ahead, get creative. Chase down some fish in a different way, have some fun. Throw a frog, skip a dock, throw a crankbait. All these ways can help you catch some fish. So get out there, have some fun, enjoy the rest of the Minnesota State Fair. The kids go back to school here soon. Gonna be busy. It's time. Fall is here, and summer, unfortunately, is over for most of us. But the fishing is still hot, so don't kid yourself. So get out there, have some fun, catch some more fish, and we'll see you next week.